In the opening scenes of the movie, we find ourselves in Berlin during World War II. Adolf Hitler is seen conversing with a man named Keppl, who appears to be his behavior coach. Hitler expresses his disapproval of the way people greet Keppl and mentions that the Nazi salute, although outdated, should still be performed to show respect. He reflects on his efforts to destroy the enemy who invaded their land, finding it perplexing and alarming that he still exists at this time. The story takes a surprising turn as Hitler wakes up in a forest and realizes that the enemy aircraft are absent from the sky. He assumes they must be taking a break. Suddenly, a ball rolls toward him, and he encounters 3 young children who inquire about his well-being. Hitler sees them as the future of Germany and asks for directions to the nearest street. Unbeknownst to him, a reporter named Fabian Sawatzki is filming the children and inadvertently captures Hitler in the background. Hitler retrieves his army cap and decides to head to the Führer bunker. As he reaches the street, he is astonished to see people riding monowheel bikes and others recording him on their cameras. He expresses his disbelief at the changed landscape, thinking he might have been in a coma and missed the war's outcome. Realizing his lack of awareness, he seeks more information and asks a passerby for directions to the chancellery. Instead of an answer, he is bombarded with requests for photos, leaving him bewildered. Overwhelmed by the bizarre events around him, Hitler concludes that something has gone wrong. He walks away and encounters a woman speaking German on her phone. Curious about the current date, he approaches her, but she becomes terrified and sprays something into his eyes, causing pain and blurred vision. Stumbling, Hitler seeks refuge in a nearby newspaper shop, where he is shocked to see the date on a newspaper, October 3, 2014. He collapses to the ground, utterly bewildered by the inexplicable journey he has found himself on. In another part of the story, the boss of a TV station, Kerner, commends Mr. Christoph Sensenbrink for his exceptional work as the deputy's head. He suggests a promotion, but instead, he announces Miss Katja Bellini as the new managing director. This unexpected decision shocks and disappoints Christoph. He heads to his office, where he vents his frustration on a struggling filmmaker named Fabian. Despite Fabian's best efforts to explain himself, Christoph loses his temper and fires Fabian, who is then escorted out by security guards. Meanwhile, sometime later, Hitler awakens in the news shop and queries the owner about the date. The owner confirms that it is indeed the year 2014. A bewildered Hitler starts to suspect that he's been kidnapped by the shopkeeper and questions if this is all a ploy by the enemy's secret service. He even threatens to harm the shopkeeper unless he reveals his true intentions. In response, the shopkeeper offers Hitler a bar of chocolate. After some effort, Hitler opens it and sniffs it, declaring it to be industrially processed grain. He asks the shopkeeper if there is still a bread shortage. However, the shopkeeper mistakes Hitler for an actor and inquires if they are filming a documentary nearby. Hitler then notices a Turkish newspaper and asks the shopkeeper if he has a Stürmer or Panzerbar. The shopkeeper informs him that he has more Turkish customers, leaving Hitler astonished by the presence of Turkish people in Berlin. He starts gathering information from the newspaper and, while reading it, concludes that he did not win the war in the past and that Germany has been handed over to ineffectual women with the charisma of a wet noodle. He also expresses his disdain for the existence of Poland, deeming the entire war to be a futile endeavor. Meanwhile, Fabian, who has been fired and is watching a video report on soccer, becomes emotional. His mother comforts him and suggests he pause the video, unaware of Hitler's presence in the background. Fabian is intrigued by the uncanny resemblance of a person who looks so much like Hitler. Back in the shop, the shopkeeper requests that Hitler set aside the newspaper and step outside. Hitler grumbles at the thought of being asked to work. The shopkeeper suggests that Hitler clean his clothes, as they are quite unpleasant. Following this, Hitler heads to a laundry place and inquires if they have an extra uniform, as walking around naked is not an option. Next, we see Hitler walking to the newsstand, dressed in jeans and a sweater. Meanwhile, Fabian has somehow located him and patiently waits in the shop. Upon seeing Hitler's transformed appearance, Fabian is astonished. He approaches Hitler with a request to film him as he navigates through modern Germany. Hitler agreed to the idea. Fabian secures some money and a car from his mother and sets out on their journey together. The two end up at a hotel where Hitler is fascinated by the television. He decides to discuss politics in Fabian's presentation. Hitler visited various places, interviewing people about their political views. He discovers that democracy has had minimal impact on the people during his absence. He observes discontent and repressed anger among the population, reminiscent of the 1930s when people held similar views but lacked the term political disenchantment. People share their concerns about immigration, prompting Hitler to emphasize his belief that racial mixing doesn't work. Later, Fabian inquires about the origin of Hitler's distinctive mustache. Hitler reveals that he trimmed his mustache to fit a gas mask during his time. During their journey, they arrive at a farm where Hitler is bitten by a dog. Enraged, he fires a shot at the animal. Fabian scolds him and confiscates the gun. As their tour continues, Fabian eventually runs out of money. However, he comes up with a plan and persuades passers-by to have their portraits sketched by Hitler. Hitler creates satirical drawings that people find amusing and are willing to pay for. With enough money collected, they proceed on their unusual adventure through modern Germany. Back in town, Fabian decides to show Christoph a video clip of Hitler. The video has garnered a significant number of views since Fabian uploaded it on the internet. Christoph is genuinely impressed by the video's popularity and asks Fabian for Hitler's name and contact information. Upon meeting Hitler, Christoph quickly suspects that he might be a lunatic and urges Fabian to remove him from office. However, before leaving, Hitler enters the director's office and proposes that they work together to save Germany. Intrigued by Hitler's idea, Bellini inquires about his plan and instructs her assistant to prepare a suitable TV format for broadcasting Hitler's ideas. Fabian then threatens Christoph, demanding that he be reinstated in his job or else he will take Hitler away. In response, Christoph offers Fabian a position as a kitchen worker, promising to promote him when a new editorial post becomes available. Sometime later, Hitler is provided with a table in the TV studio, and Christoph calls for Kromayer to assist Hitler with computer use. Hitler recalls the computers from his time and acknowledges them as one of humanity's greatest inventions. However, Kromayer informs him that his name is already taken for email registration, prompting Hitler to express frustration at others using his name. He suggests using the New Reich Chancellery as an alternative, as he likes it. Christoph plans to feature Hitler on a live comedy show called Whoa Dude. His resentment towards Bellini for receiving a promotion instead of him leads him to intend to cause trouble. Christoph aims to introduce racism into the debate through sarcastic jokes about Jews and ultimately get Hitler thrown out. The show begins, and the host, Witzigmann, invites Hitler onto the stage. The audience whispers about Hitler's appearance, but when Hitler looks at them, the hall falls into complete silence. Hitler breaks the silence but deviates from the scripted lines. He explains that he was supposed to tell a joke about immigrants but refuses to do so. He criticizes the senselessness of television shows and highlights pressing issues like poverty and unemployment, warning that the country's people are headed toward an abyss without realizing it. Hitler pledges to fight against the negative influence of television not only up to the point of reaching the abyss but until he succeeds in overcoming it. The audience responds positively, applauding his unconventional and thought-provoking ideas. As Hitler's popularity soars, jealousy brews in host Witzigmann. Bellini insists on featuring Hitler in every show, leaving Christoph distressed over his failed plan. Hitler gained immense popularity through TV interviews, promoting his vision of a resurgent Germany. He charms influential figures and party leaders with his ideas. Hitler and Fabian visit the NPD headquarters in Berlin, where Hitler criticizes their lack of accomplishments. Christoph gets excited when the police and the DA investigate hate speech complaints at the TV studio. Despite Bellini's concerns, Christoph suggests they continue broadcasting. After the DA departs, Kromayer hands Christoph a letter regarding the payment for the dog that Hitler had shot during their trip. Christoph receives it gleefully, thinking it might cause trouble. Next, Hitler appears on a TV program where he faces direct questions about his role in the war. Hitler expresses his desire to connect with people, but the interviewer contends that not all his actions can be justified. He shows a clip of Hitler shooting the dog, disturbing the audience. Hitler becomes angry and threatens the interviewer, vowing to turn their studio into a parking lot for tanks. Christoph is delighted by the negative reactions from the audience. After the disastrous interview, Bellini is fired, and Christoph is appointed as the new manager. Hitler moves into Fabian's house, finding amusement in the twists of fate, and begins writing his second book, which quickly becomes a market success. 3 months later, during a meeting at the TV studio, the company discussed significant losses. Christoph believes that Witzigmann's show will help them recover, but Witzigmann has quit his job. Christoph grows anxious and reprimands the staff for losing the show. A staff member suggests bringing Hitler back, which piques Christoph's interest. He searches for Hitler and makes an offer to Fabian, $1 million investment in their film in exchange for broadcasting it on their TV channel. Hitler and Fabian visit Kromayer's house, where Kromayer's grandmother recognizes Hitler and accuses him of gassing and killing people. She labels him a criminal and orders him to leave. In the car, Hitler shares his surprise at learning that Kromayer is Jewish. He begins belittling Jews, casting them as less than human. Fabian becomes deeply disappointed by Hitler's prejudiced words and actions. Back on the set, Fabian persuades Hitler to recount how he ended up in the woods. He asks Hitler about the events leading up to the moment the ball rolled toward him, but Hitler cannot remember. Later that night, as Hitler walks away from the set, he is ambushed by a group of thugs who blame him for taking Germany backward. They assault him, and as Hitler regains consciousness, he finds himself in a hospital with Bellini by his side. Simultaneously, Fabian reviews the footage he captured of boys playing soccer and notices that Hitler miraculously rose from where he was lying. He hurries to the location and discovers a sign indicating the historical site of the Führer bunker. Fabian rushes to the hospital but doesn't find Hitler there. Bellini informs him that Hitler has gone back to the shooting set. Fabian reveals to Bellini that he is the real Adolf Hitler, but she doesn't believe him. In a fit of desperation, Fabian attempts to explain his theory hysterically, and the guards try to apprehend him. He manages to escape and reaches the set, aiming a gun at Hitler. When questioned about his identity, Hitler explains that he never claimed to be anyone else and accuses Fabian of misrepresenting him with propaganda. He reminds Fabian that he was elected as a leader who openly shared his ideology in 1933. Fabian takes Hitler to the rooftop with his gun, cornering him and accusing him of being a monster. In response, Hitler contends that ordinary people elected an extraordinary man and entrusted the fate of the country to him because they shared the same values in their hearts. In a fit of rage, Fabian shoots Hitler, causing him to fall from the building onto the street. Suddenly, Fabian hears Hitler's voice, declaring that no German can get rid of him. To Fabian's shock, Hitler, who was just thrown down, reappears right behind him. At that moment, Bellini calls for a cut in the studio, and everyone celebrates the successful shoot. It turns out that it was all part of a film shoot, and a random actor was playing the role of Fabian. Hitler then asks everyone to remember the comrades who couldn't be with them. Elsewhere, Kromayer is in tears as she watches Fabian from a hole in the mental ward. Hitler and Bellini are busy signing autographs and giving interviews to people after the film becomes a hit. As they pass by a car, the people on the street show respect and fondness for Hitler, greeting him with respect.